Okay. Thanks again for joining us on Beyond the Exam Room. And this week we're talking about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and it's about estate planning. And we're so honored to have Nick Sisoian, law office of Nick Sisoian. He really does a great job in New Braunfels. If you need somebody to do estate planning and the life care, this is the guy to do it. So I think a lot of you have come to some of my lectures, and one of them is I say, the best gift that you can give your children. And everyone thinks it's about something, it's way different from what I actually talk about, which is really when it comes to a very emotional time. And the reality is that we're not going to be here forever. And so we're going to have to come to that bridge at some point. And sooner you kind of write that out, and the more specific in detail you have it out for your family, the easier it is for them. And so this is one of the things that I'm really glad he's here and talk about. But first question I have for you, Nick, is what's the biggest mistake you think people often make about estate planning?
I mean, the biggest mistake is doing nothing. The biggest mistake in planning is to not have a plan in the first place. And so it's understandable. It's when people don't, it's uncomfortable. It can be costly. It can be uncomfortable for people to do this, but the worst thing you can do is nothing. So I always recommend at a minimum, go sit with somebody, go meet with somebody. Myself and many other attorneys in the area in South Texas that do estate planning will offer a free consultation to just come and sit and see what's available for you and why we recommend it in the first place, to avoid maybe some of the horror stories or uncomfortable stories that you've heard from family members. I think in particular, you will hear from two sources. You'll hear from people that you know and they don't usually spend time telling you about the great experience that they had with a probate or estate planning. It'll be a bad experience that they've had. Or also people who sell estate planning packages. So they will tell you all the horror stories that you need to avoid and why you need to buy their product. And some of that stuff is accurate. But at a minimum, you need to sit and meet with somebody and say, this is what my family tree looks like. These are what my assets look like. This is my current age and health and relationship and children and all of those things. This is what my life looks like today. What would you recommend? How long will it take to do it? What does it cost? Just to have that conversation to know what it is at a minimum. Having a plan is step one.
Yeah, sure. I totally agree with that. So I heard so many horror stories being a geriatrician. Of course, what you do, you probably heard. And I heard, but just to kind of tell the audience what that means is if you don't have an estate plan and nothing is written, tell them the scenario, what happens, which is horrific.
Absolutely, it can be. Somebody passes away, what you will hear is that the state of Texas, you'll hear people say the state of Texas takes everything. And it's not that the state of Texas takes everything, it's that the state of Texas takes control of everything. There's a list of statutes written that determine what happens to your assets when you die, and you have no say over that. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes you were married to the person you've been married to your whole life. You have a child together that you've had your whole life. You have limited assets, and that it works in your favor to get done. But at a minimum, even in that best case scenario, it is still much more time consuming and much more costly to handle somebody's probate or any sort of their affairs when they're gone, if you don't have a plan in place, if you don't have a will, if you don't have a trust, if you don't have something that dictates and explains what you would like to happen when you're gone.
Well, thank you so much. So everyone here listening, you don't want that to happen. Believe me, it's a horrible experience. But you kind of mentioned that, and some people are kind of confused what the difference is. Can you explain to the audience what the difference is between a will and a trust?
Absolutely. So they both involve protecting your assets. They both give you great peace of mind. And the truth is that you need a will regardless of which direction you choose to go for your estate plan. You have to have a will as a baseline document. A will simply illustrates and explains what I would like to happen to my estate when I pass. Everybody has to have that, even people who have a will. I like to think of it as vertical. So if you would like to add a trust on top of that says, this trust is a separate entity and it owns my home, it owns my financial assets and my vehicles and my businesses, and this trust, this vehicle owns those things, and I've already described in that trust what I want to happen when I'm gone. And so for the things that are owned by the trust, they will just go in line with what the trust tells them to do. And you can get away with that for a generation or two of people. And so if you need an additional layer of protection, an additional layer of control of your assets, then you do the trust on top of the will. You do the trust separate from the will, and that trust actually owns your assets for you and determines what happens to your assets when you're gone. So there can be several reasons, and I like to give people specific examples that cover most of the issues that I see where somebody probably needs a will. If they have a very complex or a very large estate, if they have a very complex or very large family. And so those two examples are people who own oil and gas interests all over the country, a large real estate portfolio, lots of money, royalty interests that are coming in even after death, things like that. That would be a larger complex estate. A larger complex family issue could be, I only have one child and that child has special needs, so that the child has no way to manage assets themselves. I have children that are in and out of prison with addiction issues, other mental health issues, and I can't trust them to manage their own estate. They have a long-term illness. So that would be a larger complex family or asset issue. Another one that we see is people who simply live in a big city. I live in the middle of Austin, in the middle of Houston, in the middle of Dallas, where the courts take a lot longer. Everything's more expensive. The lawyers are more expensive. Even a simple probate can take months and months and months and cost thousands and thousands of dollars. If there are privacy issues, so people who are, they have reasons, like I had a client who worked for the government and had very serious privacy concerns. People who are singers and writers and successful artists of kinds that need protection and privacy, those are all really good reasons. And the reason I give you so many examples is if you add all of those up, that's millions of people in Texas that probably should get a trust on top of a will. But what we see in this area, in Comal County, Guadalupe County, Hayes County, for people that don't have a large or complex estate or a large or complex family, they just have a spouse and a kid or two and a house and a bank account or two, and they don't fall into one of those unique categories, the probates in this area are actually not that bad. Okay. I don't want to scare people off that live in the hill country. We are very lucky to live in between big cities. The lawyers are kinder and more available. The judges are kinder and more available. The court clerks are kinder and more available. The process does not take as long. It's not as expensive. The lawyers aren't as expensive. All of those things are better in the hill country. It's a unique place to live. So I don't want to scare people into thinking that they have to have an elaborate, expensive estate plan as a minimum. At a minimum, they need a will. And almost any estate planning attorney in South Texas can get them a will and get them started. And if they end up needing more additional planning, there's tax issues or finance issues or family issues, you can always add that trust on top of it later.
Thank you for explaining that. By the way, he's actually not a lawyer. He actually works for New Braunfels Chamber of Commerce. And so he said that so you can move from Houston to Dallas to here.
Yeah, that's right.
We're kinder and nicer here. Remember that.
It's a fact. It's a fact. And more available. I think that's the thing. I think that's part of it is people call attorneys' offices, doctors' offices, professionals' offices, and they're around here. We're spoiled because they will actually get to see you, and they get to see me and talk to me, and they have my phone number and your phone number and my email and your email, and it is unique. It's a unique thing, and that. It lends to and tends to create situations that are more familial, more comfortable, less expensive, all of those things.
And then when we come to like estate planning and the life issues, it's not just from my perspective. I've seen a lot of pitfalls of not just from the financial perspective, but from medical legal perspective. One example stood out was the wife was going crazy because she lost her husband, and the cable company was in his name, and he set all the passwords and everything else, and she could not get the cable company to close the account, and it was horrific. It was a nightmare. She actually had to hire an attorney to get that done. So those are some of the pitfalls that I think people should avoid.
Absolutely. And I also remind people that many people understandably are uncomfortable about coming to discuss this because they don't want to discuss their death. And what I remind them is 80% of the documents that we provide in an estate plan are about your life. While you were living, you may run into situations where you needed assistance in a medical setting, you need assistance in a financial setting. And so 80% of our documents are powers of attorney and medical directives and HIPAA releases and things like that, so that as you run into complex situations at MBU, at your cable company, at your, with your auto insurance, with your subscriptions, with your email, as you run into those situations that everybody tends to during their life, you have someone who can assist you while you're alive. You have a spouse or a child or a grandchild or a sibling or a neighbor who can assist you with those things, helping you manage your affairs while you're still alive, because your life is ultimately what this is about. And so in addition to the peace of mind we want you to have during your life, we also want you to have protection during your life. You may not always be able to function healthy in a healthy way, be able to handle your own affairs, and you want the documentation in place that shows these are the people that I trust to assist me while I'm still alive. And I feel like that's just as important, if not more important, as the documents that we handle when you're gone.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I cannot tell you, I'm not trying to scare people, but I've had multiple occasions already where the patient had a significant advanced dementia where it was so obvious he or she could not handle their own financial affairs, and they didn't have the proper documents in place and protocols in place, and so that ultimately became a nightmare. And so you can't foresee what's going to happen to you, and I know it's an unpleasant kind of experience, but really think about all the unknowns that could happen, and just be prepared for it. Just like you said, always be prepared.
Absolutely. And one thing I can promise, one thing I told Doc before this, is my favorite thing to hear, and the most common thing that I hear when people are done and they finally sign their documents, is, I feel so much better. My kids will feel so much better that I did this. And it's a fact. It is 90% of the people that are sitting in my office, I can see their shoulders slump and breathe and say, and have a sigh of relief, a true sigh of relief, that this is done. I don't have to worry about this anymore.
Right.
It's a real physical reaction to knowing that all of my documentation is here. My people that are involved with me financially know what I want. People that are involved with my healthcare know what I want. My attorney knows what I want, and most importantly, my family knows what I want, and it's all documented right here. If you are the kind of person who wants to take a very active role in your estate planning, you can meet with your estate planner or your lawyer every year. You can talk about it, make sure it's still good. Other people are like me, my wife and I, when we signed ours, I signed it, I felt that relief, I put it in a folder, and I put it away, and I never have to look at it or think about it again.
Exactly.
These documents are built to last forever if you want. It doesn't have to be a constant conversation. It can be a one-time conversation, get it out of the way, and it be done. Of course, the more complex your family is, the more complex your estate is, the more often you need to revisit it.
Well, that's a good point. How often should they revisit that?
For people who have anything unique about their finances or their assets, I recommend at least once a year.
Okay.
And most advanced estate planning attorneys, trust attorneys, absolutely include that as part of their plan. Let's make sure that this still makes sense. Especially with trust planning, you may buy or sell vehicles or homes or change accounts,
Exactly.
and you need to constantly update those things. For people who just want to do a will and a power of attorney, I recommend every three years or so that they reach out and let us know that nothing has really changed. But if they've moved or family situations have changed, there's new grandkids on the way. There's new people start businesses all the time. This New Braunfels is a haven for entrepreneurs. We're constantly starting businesses. That's why I work on LLCs as well, because there's so many entrepreneurs in town. Your estate planner needs to know.
Right. We
need to know what you've got going on so that we can make sure your assets are protected.
Yeah, the way I look at it is really important to have someone like Nick on your side, because it's almost like they're a legal document, like a legal documentary of your life. And so something dramatically happens in your family, for example, let's say you get remarried or you have new grandchildren, all those things, that it has to be updated into legal documents. So anytime something major changes, then that's the time that they should reach out, right? Absolutely.
Anything major, things that are, I always tell people, you'll know. If you're thinking about it, you'll know. It's time to talk to me about your business or your estate plan. And I also tell people that for the part of the peace of mind is not for the major changes in your life. Sometimes it's for the inconveniences. You may not have major dementia. You just might be stuck on a cruise for an extra week, and your life insurance premium needs to get paid. on time, and a certain document needs to be signed, and you need somebody to go to the title company who can sign that document for you. An important envelope needs to get picked up or dropped off from the bank. Those types of inconveniences in life can have real life ramifications if they're not handled. And so when you have a power of attorney who can assist you while you're still living,
Exactly.
it's just sometimes it's sometimes it's an emergency,
Right.
and sometimes it's just an inconvenience. But either way, it's better to have documentation of who can assist me, who can run down to MBU and pay my. I had one that I need somebody to run down to MBU to pay my bill, because if I'm out of town and the power goes out, all my fish are going to die.
Right.
And this person was so concerned about all of their fish and their food in the freezer, and they said, I have to have somebody who can go take care of this. So whatever it is for you, it's peace of mind while you're living, peace of mind for your survivors. And it can be the major changes in life as well as the minor inconveniences.
Yeah, one of the things, I don't know if you noticed that Nick uses a lot, and it's right on point, it's a peace of mind. I know if you're thinking about it, you're kind of angst about it, but what Nick said is 100% true. Once you actually have everything in place, it's just like a big relief that just comes out. And it's not only for you, but it's for your family. How much easier it is for them to just basically follow exactly what you want instead of them guessing. And then if you don't do that, if you leave room for any type of guessing or judgment, then that will always lead to conflict. And I've seen it personally as a geriatrician. So honestly, for you and for your family, I would highly, highly recommend reaching out to like Nick and set up an appointment to do a real estate plan. Estate planning. It can only help you and your family.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
You got it. Thank you so much. Awesome. You're